All right, y'all. Say good morning. Good morning. Let us begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning. To thank our TALMUD TORAH sponsors for the month of ER Stephen Teri Czinn for dedicating all the Shir Midrashos this month in honor of their grandson Matan Shmuel Aharon. May we zocha emeres Hashem to grow to an incredible ben Torah ad mea be'esrim shanim tovos. To thank our week of learning sponsors, Hayley Ari Lichterman in memory of Hayley's mother, Leah Bas Reuven Meir, Zichron Livracha, we obtain the merit of our TALMUD TORAH. Hashem will have an aliyah and the family a neshama. So with that, let us begin. We have a lot to do today. Baruch Hashem, a really exciting sugya in Tumah and TORAH, Baruch Hashem. And again, we'll have the opportunity here to really walk away with some fundamental constructs and some fundamental categories of Tumah and TORAH. So we're going to have time for the Rambam and get ready for some beautiful Agadah today as well. Beautiful Agadah. So today's daf is Daf Lamed. Daf Lamed. We are picking up on Chav Testament base. Let's actually pick up at Amar Rabbi Yochanan, which is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16 lines up from the bottom. Two words from the end of the line. Rabbi Yochanan said, Tam b'ribi Ein yodea. I don't understand Rabbi say b'ribi in this context. B'ribi is an honorific term, right? That refers to a great person, like a Rav. In this context, it's referring to Rabbi Yossi, who spoke about before, right? Rabbi Yossi made the statement before of minayin l'revi'i b'kodesh shepasel. I will say, remember again, yesterday we distinguished our terms between tameh and pasel. Tameh means that you are tameh and what? Have the ability to convey tumah to something else. Pasel means you are tameh and do not have the ability to convey tumah to something else. Rabbi Yossi said, where do we know? Rabbi Yossi also pointed out that the holier something is, the more receptive or susceptible it is to tumah. So, for example, kodesh, sacrificial items, which is on the top of the ladder of kedusha, ultimately you could have a revi, even a 4th degree tumah. Whereas by most other things, for example, truma tops out at a shlishi, and by chulin there's a discussion. Does chulin tap out at a sheni, or does chulin tap out at a shlishi? Again, we'll discuss that as well. So Rabbi Yochanan says, I don't understand where Rabbi Yossi gets this idea that there's a revi'i bakodesh. Shari chuvasa bitzido. That's what I will say, because again, there is a refutation already inherent in his statement. Ochel haba machmos tvul yom. So let's listen to this. If you have food that was touched by a tvul yom, so yochiach, this could prove the point. Why? Shepasal b'truma. So I'll say, ultimately, again, if you have food that a tvul yom touched, so ultimately, again, such contact, if the food that we're talking about is truma, ultimately makes the food pasal, ve'ina oser revi'i bakodesh, and it will not make a kodesh, or it will not create a revi'i situation in kodesh. The Sanya Abishal says, tvul yom tchila. So we'll say a tvul yom is looked at as a rishon l'tumah, l'kodesh, for kodesh purposes, l'tamei shnayim v'lifsal echad. And ultimately, we'll say what that means is, when we say that a tvul yom ultimately is a rishon, that means that halacha l'maisa, a tvul yom has the ability to go ahead and make something else into a rishon. The rishon has the ability to go ahead and make something into a sheni. The sheni has the ability to go ahead and make something into a shlishi. And the shlishi ultimately has something to make into a revi. Now remember again, the revi is pasal, but ultimately again does not convey tumah to anything else. Reuven Meir says, "Metame echad uposal echad." Reuven Meir, on the other hand, says, "No, halacha l'maisa, it has the ability. Right, this is ultimately when a tvul yom touches kodesh, he makes that into a shlishi, and then a shlishi makes the next item into a revi." V'acham decham say, "Kishim sheposa ochle truma or mashke truma." The same way, ultimately, again, that he goes ahead and he makes pasal food of truma and drink of truma. Kach posa ochle kodesh or mashke kodesh. So too, again, he makes pasal foods of kodesh and drinks of kodesh. Maske Rapapa. So Rapapa says, "Mimayd Rabbi Yossi K'Rabbanon Srili." Hani Rabbi Yossi was like the Rabbanon. Dilma Kabashol Srili. Maybe I was like Abashol. What does Abashol say? The Amar Litame Shnayim V'Lifsal Echad. Right? What is that? Ultimately, again, it has the ability to make two degrees tameh and last degree pasal, meaning that ultimately, again, in Kodesh, you can make something into a Sheni, Sheni can make a Shlishi, and ultimately, again, Shlishi can make a Revi'i, but the Revi'i remains pasal, not tameh. Fine. If he holds like Abishol, Laisi the Revi Bakodesh, Me'ochel Shaba Machmas Tvul Yom. Let him learn out the concept of the Revi Bakodesh from food touched by Tvul Yom. Uma Ochel Haba Machmas Tvul Yom, Di Tvul Yom Gufei Mutter. I'm sorry. Uma Ochel Haba Machmas Tvul Yom. Now, when it comes to food that is touched by Tvul Yom, Di Tvul Yom Gufei Mutter Bechulin. A Tvul Yom himself ultimately is mutter to consume chulin, or doesn't convey tumah to chulin. Amrit oser revi bakodesh, and yet again the Tvul Yom himself has the ability to make a revi bakodesh. Ochel, top of lamed, ochel shlishi haba machmas sheni. So I will say ultimately again, if you have a food that is a shlishi that became a shlishi by dint of having connected, having been touched by a sheni, the sheni gufei aser bechulin. Sheni itself is aser by chulin. Eino din she'oser revi bakodesh, should certainly go ahead and make a revi in kodesh. V'chitema diikal nifrach. Maybe you'll say there's a pircha that one could ask. Malet tvul yom shekein avatomah. We mentioned this on the top of Amud Beis yesterday, right? A tvul yom maybe is different. What does it mean that a tvul yom is an avatomah? Or as well say, who's a tvul yom? A tvul yom is a person. A person is capable of being an avatomah, right? Right? When is a person capable of being an avatomah? A person touches a corpse. I remember again, the corpse is the aviyah bosatuma. A person touches the person himself becomes an avatuma. So maybe that just relegates the halachos of Tvul Yom into a totally different tuma category. So shekein avatuma ha'aisina mimechusar kippurim v'lo parchua. Okay, so we can bring it out from the case. Also, we said this yesterday. We can bring this out from the case of mechusar kippurim. We'll say, remember again, that's the individual who is no longer a Tvul Yom. Ultimately, again, he's already had head of Shemesh, but he's still waiting to bring his karbanos, and yet we did not bring up this particular point, this particular pircha. So obviously, again, it does not play a dominant role. Okay? By the way, we're gonna bring all of this Tum Torah together. The Rambam is going to do a true chesed for us and consolidate all of this entire sugya for us into about 6 lines. It's about 6 lines. So right now, there's just going to be a lot of back and forth regarding the Tumah, but Emir Hashem, the clarity, I promise, the clarity is going to come. Amar Rabba ben Isi Amarav. Reuven Meir, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yoshua, Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Eliezer, Kulus Filu. We'll say all of these opinions. Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yoshua, Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Eliezer, right? Which you're tempted to say is Hayim Sumim B'nei Brak. No, so we'll say so again. So they're not Sumim B'nei Brak, but rather again Kulus Filu. All of these Rabbanim subscribe to the same concept, which is De'ein Sheni Ose Shlishi B'chulin. I will say that a Sheni cannot make a shlishi by chulin, which Rabbi say means, just to translate what that means in layman's terms, which is, for chulin, the lowest degree of tumah you could get to is sheni. That's it. And I will say, by the way, just again, this is why it makes, if you follow, by the way, it sounds like where the Gemara is going with this is like this, that chulin taps out at a sheni, truma taps out at shlishi, and kodesh taps out at Revi'i, which again, and you can see the Tumah construct, right? So Chulin, which is Chulin, doesn't possess Kedusha, therefore is going to have the least number of levels of Tumah. Now again, what I just want to point out, in our Mishnah, Rabbi Akiva made a whole drasha that seemed to go against that. Remember, you're going to both say, how did we get into this? You're like, I'm asking myself that same question, right? How did we get into this? All of this started because of Rabbi Akiva and Mishnah. There's nothing to do with Sotah. The reason why this is here is because Bo Bayom Darash Rabbi Akiva. And what does Rabbi Akiva's entire drasha? Well, it's interesting. Ironically, what was Rabbi Akiva's entire drasha? What was his drasha? That a sheni can make a shlishi by chulin. And remember what was Rabbi Akiva dash in the pasuk, V'chol kli chares asher yipal men al tocho kol asher b'socho yitma. What was Rabbi Akiva's case? You have a kli chares. What was the kli chares? The earthenware oven, right? What do you have inside of the oven? A loaf of bread. What falls into the oven? A sheretz. Let's go through this. According to Rabbi Akiva, what happens? Sheretz makes the oven a rishon, right? So the oven makes the bread a sheni, and now the pasuk says, according to Rabbi Akiva, yitma. Yitma means the bread could go ahead and make something else tameh, which means the bread can make another item a shlishi. Rabbi say, if you notice by the Rabbi Akiva in the Mishnah, does not distinguish between truma or chulin, which sounds like Rabbi Akiva is advancing that you could have a shlishi b'chulin. So I'll say, so now the Gemara is saying, well, hold up, because there's a whole camp that rejects that notion, and says, no, by chulin, you cannot make a shlishi. By chulin, this is very exciting. By chulin, the most you could have, ultimately, again, is a sheni. Rabbi Meir. So let's also say, so now we're going to go through each of these opinions and to show how they hold that ultimately, again, a sheni cannot make a shlishi by chulin. So here we go. Rabbi Meir, this nan, kalaton bias ma'am midivrei sofrim. So this is an interesting case. Anything that requires immersion in a mikvah, midrabanan, which means tuma drabanan. Take a look at Rashi. Kalaton bias ma'am midivrei sofrim, Rashi says, kol shu tar min haTorah, anything that midarais is really tar, v'chachamim his kikuhu lavo b'mayim v'litar. But Chazal came along, the rabbis came along and said, you need immersion in a mikvah. For example, kigon, haba rosh of ruba b'mayim shuvim, somebody who goes ahead of us is actually interesting, and has the majority, rosh of ruba, his head, and the majority of his body in drawn water. So I'll say, we actually saw this in Brachos, if you remember again, that halacha l'maisa, midrabanan, if let's say you take a bucket of water, right, or a very large barrel of water, enough water to go ahead and cover your head and the majority of your body, midrabanan, you have to go to the mikveh after that. It's fascinating. Why? Chazal were concerned that people might erroneously think that pouring water over yourself takes care of tumah, right? Whereas only immersion in a mikveh takes care of tumah. So to obviate that concern, Chazal said, well, if you pour enough drawn water over yourself, it actually generates a rabbinic obligation of immersion. Quite fascinating. Okay. So again, somebody eats a half a pras, right? Half a pras of ritually impure food, or hands, for example, right? The yadayim are considered to be tameim. Ultimately, again, they require immersion. Fine. So I'll say, so anything that requires immersion midrabanan, b'tameas hakodesh, has the ability to make kodesh tamei, uposel asat truma, and makes truma pasel, which again, remember, pasel will say meaning what? That again, it's tamei but cannot convey tuma, umutter b'chulin, and ultimately, again, doesn't have an impact on chulin, right? So we'll say, so if you are tamei with a type of rabbinic tuma, which would generate an obligation for rabbinic immersion, for chulin, you have no impact. Chulin, you have no impact. Okay. Over Meiser Sheni, sorry, Meiser, so I'll say, what about Meiser Sheni? What about if you touch Meiser Sheni? Uber Meiser. And also no impact for Meiser Sheni. So no impact for both Meiser Sheni as well as for Chulin. Div Rabbi Meir. So I'll say, these words are Rabbi Meir. The Chamim osrim b'Meiser. The Chum say that by Meiser Sheni it would aser. It would aser by achila, for consumption. So I will say, so ultimately, and what do you see over here? See Rabbi Meir, that Allah Alamaisa, again, that a sheni can't make a shlishi by chulin. Fine. Rabbi Yossi, what is Rabbi Yossi? How the Amr? So also Rabbi Yossi is what we said before. Right? Rabbi Yossi quoted on Chavtes Beis. Dim Isei, because if he held that a sheni can make a shlishi by chulin, leisi l'revi'i b'truma, v'chamishi b'kodesh. Then ultimately, again, I will say, then if that's the case, that ultimately, again, that chulin could even become a shlishi, then that by definition would mean that truma should be able to become a revi'i, and kodesh should be able to become a chamishi. Because I will say, one thing we know in the halachos of tumah and taharos we saw before is the holier the item is, the more receptive it is to tumah. So by definition, truma is going to have more levels of tumah than ultimately, again, chulin. And kodesh is going to have more levels of tumah than truma. So therefore, again, if chulin could really reach a shlishi, that has to mean that truma has to be able to reach a revi'i, and kodesh has to be able to reach a chamishi. The fact that Rabbi Yossi does not entertain that possibility tells us that what? That chulin must stop at sheni and doesn't go into a shlishi. Next, Rabbi Yeshua, the son of Rabbi from Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua, we saw the son of Eliezer, Omer, ha'ochel ochel rishon. Interesting. If a person eats food that is a rishon, that makes you into a rishon. Sheni, mamish, like you are what you eat, right? You eat the sheni, right? You eat the sheni, you become a sheni. Shlishi. Ultimately, you consume shlishi or shlishi. So we'll say, so again, Rabbi Yeshua says, ha'ochel rishon, right? I'm sorry, ochel rishon, va'ochel sheni. Person who eats a rishon will be a rishon. Based on a person who eats a sheni will be a sheni. Shlishi, what happens if you eat a shlishi? then that means sheni b'kodesh vein sheni b'truma. Ultimately, again, you become a sheni by kodesh, but not a sheni by truma. I will say, now, how does such a case like this occur? Bechulin shenasu al taras truma. We'll say so many case of chulin that was prepared with the strictures of truma. And I will say there's such a concept like this of sometimes people being as careful with chulin as they are with truma. So why would anyone ever do this? It's very simple. You know who did this? Kohanim did this, right? Why? Because if you're a Kohen, so think about this. You're a Kohen during times of the Beis Hamikdash. Emirat Hashem halavai bekarov. It's dangerous to maintain two different standards in your home for different types of food. Right? For truma we're makbid like this, because you have to be. For chulin, we're not. That's dangerous, I will say, because chances are what's going to end up happening, at some point in time you're going to get mixed up and you're going to apply your chulin standards to your truma. So therefore there was such a concept of chulin shena'asa al taras, either al taras kodesh or al taras truma, where people would go, Kohanim, really, again, it's true that anyone could do it, but it makes the most sense that it would be Kohanim who would actually do it. Take a look at Rashi. We'll say Rashi is in the wider lines, 4 lines in. We'll say, what type of chulin ultimately, again, that if you eat it, right, if you eat a shlishi, that ultimately, again, you become a sheni for kodesh. There's talking about a case of chulin that was made with the strict, or prepared with the strictures of truma. Shebalei and kohen. Ultimately, again, often the case that would happen over here is the owner, right? The balabas over here is a kohen. The ragal b'truma, he normally eats truma. The kibal alav le'echol chulin shala b'taras truma, and he would go ahead and took upon himself to eat his chulin with the strictures of truma. Kedei she'ragal trumosav b'tara. Ultimately, again, in order that he would know how to properly interact with his truma. Fine. So I'll say, so the point over here is, this is the case, ultimately, again, where potentially you could find the case of chulin, of a shlishi in chulin, but otherwise you would not find the case of shlishi by chulin. So he goes on, he says, b'chulin shnas al taras truma. Al taras truma in, al taras hakodesh lo. Al makasavar, Ein sheni osa shlishi b'chulin. We'll say, what do you see from here? He also subscribes to the idea that sheni can't go ahead and create a shlishi by chulin. Fine. So we're just going through the list of all of the opinions who subscribe to this idea against Rabbi Akiva that sheni cannot create a shlishi by chulin. Next, Rabbi Elazar. The sign of Elazar Omer Shloshtan Shavin Harishon Sheba Chodesh V'Sheba Chulin V'Sheba Truma. So I'll say all 3 of these categories of Tumah are the same, whether it's a Rishon in Kodesh, in Chulin, or in Truma. Metami Shnayim Uposel Echad B'Kodesh. Right. Ultimately, again, I will say when it comes to Kodesh, ultimately it creates 2 levels of Tumah, and 1 level of Psul. Metame Echad Uposel Echad B'Truma. Right. Ultimately, again, it makes 1 level of Tumah and 1 level of Psul in Truma. Uposel Echad B'Chulin. And it only passes 1 in chulin, which Rabbi tells you what? That by chulin the most you get is a 2nd level of tumah, which is a sheni. The sheni, that's Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Eliezer, Disnan, Rabbi Eliezer, Omer, this is actually a very interesting case. Chala nitelas min Torah ala tmea. We'll say, now watch this. You can go ahead and take chala. Rabbi say, literally again, remember what's chala? Removal of a portion of the dough that is given to the kohen. One of the matnas kuna. So you could take, listen to this case, you could take challah from a tahar dough for a tameh dough. Now, right? In other words, let's say I have a tameh dough. I want to give challah to the kohen. You can't separate out challah tmeah. But there is a way to separate challah from a tahar dough for a tameh dough. Okay? How do I do that? This is actually quite interesting. Fine, right? There's more to this Rashi. Fine, but we'll. Okay, let's just read the case. Here we go. So chalani tell us minatorah tmeah. So we'll say. So again, here's the case. I have a tameh dough, a tahar dough. I can't take challah from the tameh dough, obviously, because challah tmeah. What are you going to do with challah tmeah, right? So nice again. But what I can do is I could somehow remove dough from the tahar dough and allow that to be challah on the tameh dough. How can you do that? Watch this. Ketzad Shtei isos. Let's say here's the case. I have two batches of dough. Achos tar v'achos tameya. One is tamei, one is tar. So no tel kedei chala mi'isa shlo harmu chalasa. V'no saying pachos mikabeitza be'emtza kedei litol min hamukav. This is incredible. I will say, what do? You essentially create a bridge between the two doughs, between the tar dough and the tamei dough. But I will say, 1 second, if I go and I create a bridge, does that not allow the tamei dough to confer its tumah status upon the tar dough? So I will say, you make that bridge smaller than the amount that is normally capable of transmitting tumah. This is incredible. So what do, I will say? You go ahead and essentially, you put a piece of dough, pachos mikabetza, less than the size of an egg, in between the two doughs. Now, we'll say, now what does that mean? Look at Rashi, last Rashi in the daf. So we'll say, so just to illustrate the image, imagine, right? Tahar dough, tamei dough. Now we'll say, I want to be, what's my goal? I want to be able to separate challah for the tamei dough, but I want to do it from the tahar dough, right? The problem is, just to illustrate this, challah has to be separated min hamukaf. The ideal way to separate out challah is you separate out challah from the actual batch itself, not from a separate batch. So the problem is to take a piece of dough from the tahar dough and say this is challah for the tamei dough. It's not min hamukaf. It's not attached. So I want a way to attach the two doughs. The problem is that what? The problem is that if I attach them, then what? The tahar dough becomes tamei as well. So how could I attach it so that they're still one without transmitting tumah? So we'll say this is incredible. How do you do it? With a piece of dough in the middle that is less than the size of a beitzah, of an egg. Because we'll say food items less than the size of a beah do not transmit tumah. So watch this gadlus. You're going to take tamei dough, you're going to take tar dough, and in the middle of them, what are you going to take? Another little ball of dough, less than the size of a beah. You're going to now connect the two doughs with that less than beah dough ball. Yeah, dough ball, right? That's the bridge. So now I'll say, here's the gadlus. Remember I say, are the doughs connected? Yes. Absolutely. So now they're connected physically, right? Because they have that little dough ball bridge in the middle. But that bridge is too small to allow for the transference of tumah. So they are considered connected in that now I can go ahead and remove from the tahar dough, ultimately again on the tamei dough, but Lamai said they're not connected enough so as to allow for the transference of tumah. Look at Rashi before you go ahead. So I'll say, now just read it inside. He says, Ketzad, Shtei Isos, Achas Tar v'Achas Tameya, no tel kedei chala mi'isa, shelo horma chalasa. So again, now I could remove chala from the tahar dough, v'nosein pachos mikabeitza be'emtza, and put less than a size of a beah size ball in the middle, kedei litol min hamukav. Now the doughs are connected, but not connected to allow the transference of tumah. Take a look at Rashi before you turn. He says, "V'nosenes pachus mikabeitza be'emtza kedei litrom min hamukav." So he says, "Mukav lashon mechubar u'mekurav kimo ein makifin shtei chavios u'mikra nafkalan varimosim menu min hamukav lo b'sifri hilchach tzricha amabeis lahakif achala itzal isafan." So we'll say here, Rashi is just going through the mechanics of mukav. I will say, by the way, there's a tremendous Musar Haskell in this. Tremendous Musar Haskell. I will say, this, by the way, this case over here, tamei dough, tahar dough, right? I want to connect them, but I don't want to allow for the transference of tumah. I will say, is this not the ultimate metaphor for life? Right? Often I will say, I am the tahar dough. The tahar dough. Sometimes, unfortunately, the world is a tamei dough. Now, the truth is, but here's the thing. I want to make an impact in the world. And there are things that I could do in the world, and I need to be part of the world. It's easy to go ahead and just simply remove myself from the world. But often I can't because of parnasa, and I'll say more than that, there is a mitzvah to engage society. Right? There is a mitzvah to make a positive impact, to make kadeshim shamayim in the world. But the problem is, if I attach my dough, right, to the worldly dough, then what happens to my dough? What happens to my dough? My dough becomes tummy. So we'll say, what is life all about? Life is all about finding your bridge. It's all about finding your ball of dough that is pachos mikibeya. It's all about finding the way to engage in a healthy way without allowing the tumah to blow back on me. Our entire lives, I will say, is spent to finding this. I know I've been looking for something. I finally figured out what I've been looking for. I've been looking for a ball of dough less than the size of a beah. That's what I'm looking for in life. A way to engage positively and productively, but one that does not allow the tumah that is so often present and prevalent in society to come back and transfer back to me. That's what I'm looking for. So we'll say, what is that ball of dough? So we'll say, that ball of dough ultimately is Torah. That ball of dough is ruchnius. That ball of dough is the type of home that you create. That dough is the way you choose to relate to all of the things around you. That ball of dough, that is what allows you to ultimately, again, interact, that allows you to go to make an impact, but doesn't allow the tumah to flow back. I will say, the entire life metaphor is, again, Sotah, Lamed, Amud, Aleph, the bottom case. That's it. My dough, the Torah dough, the world's dough, the Tamei dough. We could keep the dough separate, and there are many who espouse this idea. Just keep your dough away from the worldly dough. Just keep it away. And by the way, it's easy to live that way. Right? Just seclude your dough. That's it. I say, we know that we have a higher calling. And the higher calling is we have what to offer the world. We have what to offer society. We have the ability to impact change. But if you just put your dough right onto society's dough, you're done. Your dough is done. Right? Your beautiful Torah dough is now tamei. But if you find that medium, that way to interact, that little ball of dough, pachos mikebeya, that right amount of interaction that allows for impact, you could also, because remember, if you have positive impact, then what could happen? You could take challah on the tamei dough. Which means you can have a positive impact on the world. You can have a positive impact on society. You can have a positive impact on the world around you, as long as you have the right medium for interaction. Too much interaction, everything becomes tamei. Too little interaction, no impact. You're not mina mukaf. But the right amount of interaction, the right amount of immersion, ball of dough pachos mikebeya, suddenly again you have the ability to affect a dramatic and beautiful change. Incredible. What says Koteen? The Chum says aser. The Chum don't like this idea. They don't like this idea. The Tanya we learned, the Tanya Kibeya, Savrua, so the Tanya Kibeya, Savrua, Idi Isa Rishon. So what's the case over here? So Bepashtos, this is talking about an Isa, a dough. Let's say I told you, Turan Tara is ridiculously exciting. Ridiculously exciting, right? And life is Tuman Tara, as you said yesterday. Idi Isa Rishon. So let's say Bepashtos, we're talking about a dough that is a Rishon. V'chulin hatevulin lechala, and ultimately, as we're talking about a dough of chulin that's obligated in chala, lo kechala damu. Ultimately, again, doesn't have the status of chala. What are they arguing about? Demar savar ein sheni osa shlishi b'chulin. Ultimately, again, one opinion is saying that a sheni doesn't make a shlishi in chulin. Umar savar sheni osa shlishi b'chulin, and ultimately, again, so we'll say if you hold that a sheni can't make a shlishi in chulin, then ultimately again, that's why halacha l'maisa, you could have the ball of dough in the middle the size of a beah. Whereas again, the other opinion will hold that sheni osa shlishi b'chulin, ultimately again would say that the ball of dough has to be less than a beah. Amar Rav Mari Bereid Rav Kahana, the kuli alma ein sheni osa shlishi b'chulin. In reality, everyone agrees that a sheni can't make a shlishi in chulin. I will say, by the way, when you say everybody, I just want to point out the obvious outlier to everybody is who? Rabbi Akiva. Right? Remember again, Rabbi Akiva in the Mishnah, all right, his whole drasha was that a sheni. It means everybody over here in this context. Here also we're talking about Tevel that ultimately again is subject to the obligation of chala. Mar savar kechala damu. One says it has the status of chala. Umar savar lo kechala damu. It doesn't have the status of chala. So another possibility is chuli amo chulin atfulin lechala lo kechala damu. No, chulin abosei from which chala has not been separated. In fact, is not like chala. Ve'ein sheni osa shlishi b'chulin, and sheni can't make a shlishi by chulin. V'hacha, this is incredible. B'mutar ligram tuma lechulin sheba eretz Yisrael kamiflagi. I will say, watch this. I will say, here's the shaila. The shaila is, are you allowed to go ahead and cause tumah to chulin in Eretz Yisrael? Because Rabbi will say, the part we're going to have focus, we'll say, is on as follows. Let me be clear on one thing. I didn't mention this before. With this model of the ball of dough, that ultimately again is pachos mi kibeya or kibeya. We'll say one thing is clear, which is, or kibeya, let's go with kibeya. The dough becomes tameh, right? The dough ball becomes tameh. But what can't the dough ball do? What can't it can't transfer. So we'll say that's the godless of this idea. The godless of this idea, remember again, let's just go back. What do I want to accomplish, right? What's it's always good in life. What's my goal? In the case of the tameh dough and the tar dough, what's my goal? Take challah for the tameh dough from the tahor dough. That's my stated goal. What's my problem? Good to analyze. What's my problem? You can't, right? Why? Because in order to take challah must be taken min hamokaf, which means challah has to be taken from the dough itself. So to go ahead and, right, I have tameh dough over here, tar dough over here, to take challah on the tameh dough from the tar dough, that doesn't work. It's min hamokaf. So we'll say, so what I want to do, I want to attach them. If I attach them, then what? They become one dough. What's my problem with attaching them? Attaching them is transference of tumah. So we'll say, what's the incredible chap? The incredible chap is attach them in a way that allows them to become one dough without the transference of tumah. Right? So we'll say, so how do you do that? They pashtos with a ball of dough that is the size of either a beya or less than a beya. Fine. Shabbos say, so that's the problem that works. But one thing is clear, which is when you do that, what happens to the ball of dough? The ball of dough becomes tameh. It just doesn't transfer tumah. Shabbos say, watch this. What's their machlokes about this? Is incredible. What's their machlokes? Their machlokes is mar savar muter ligram tumah l'chulin sheberetz Yisrael. One opinion says, Shabbos say, it is permitted to intentionally cause chulin to become tameh in Eretz Yisrael. Umar savar asr ligrom tumah l'chulin sheberetz Yisrael. Whereas the other opinion says, no, it is asr to go ahead and cause items to become tameh, chulin to become tameh. So Shabbos say, hear this? Look how beautiful this is. It's a machlokas about the nature of tumah in Eretz Yisrael. Are you ever permitted to intentionally cause tumah in Eretz Yisrael? That's a machlokas. And I will say, what a beautiful, beautiful machlokas, right? Eretz Yisrael is ish kodesh kadoshim. Can a person intentionally go out of their way to cause tumah? Again, for a good reason over here in Eretz Yisrael. That's the fundamental machlokas. Okay, Shabbos say. So bottom line, let's talk about this. How do we paskin? Let's work backwards, right? Quickly. I will say all of this is hilchos tumas. Hilchos Tumah Perek Yud Aleph, right? Avos HaTumah Perek Yud Aleph. So we'll say, here we go. Let's just run through this list quickly because we still have great Gemara to do. Harishon Shebechulin, Tamei Amatame, Hashini Pasol Amatame. We'll say, Halacha Mesedam and Paskins, Chulin, become a Rishon, become a Sheni, that's it. Tops out at Sheni, a Sheni is Pasol. A Sheni is Pasol. So we'll say, that's why you pass it by Chulin. Rishon, Sheni. Next. Truma. Harishon, Vasheni Shebetruma Tmein, Umetamin, Hashlishi Pasol. So we'll say Truma, you could have a Rishon, a Sheni, a Shlishi, but that's it. Shlishi is possible, Shlishi can convey. Kodesh, Rishon, Sheni, Shlishi, Revi'i, Pasal. We'll say, so there it is. We'll say beautiful. Hilchos Tumah 101, right? Chulin gets to a Rishon, to a Sheni, tops out a Sheni's Pasal, that's it. Truma, Rishon, Sheni, Shlishi, tops out to Shlishi is Pasal. Kodesh, Rishon, Sheni, Shlishi, Revi'i, and Revi'i is going to be Pasal. Beautiful. That's it. That's all I got. I say, right? So that is, I will say, but I will point out again, obviously, you can get to the Rambam, everything sounds simple, but the way to get to that simple, straightforward, is obviously the sugya we just worked through. Incredible. But let's go back there. Bobim Dar Shabi Akiva. So let's remember again, the next machlok said in the Mishnah was about how to understand the psukim by the Ari Halaviyim. Right, so we'll say, so remember again, one pasuk said that the outskirts of the Ari Halaviyim are 2,000 amos. One said ultimately it was 1,000 amos. So we had a whole machlokes in the Mishnah about how to interpret those particular phrases. So I will say, but again, I just want to point out just before we move on, it's hard to leave Tumah Tara. Right? I will say, so just before we move on, again, two dramatic life lessons. Number one, there's nothing better in the world than Tumah Tara, because Tumah Tara tells you that which is Tameh could be made tar, and there is no, we said yesterday, no more incredible life lesson and no more incredible piece of chizuk than that. That's number one. And number two, I was saying, an incredible metaphor, life metaphor, contained in the two doughs connected by the pachos mikabeya ball of dough. Ultimately, again, highlighting and framing for us the nature of proper engagement in the world. Okay, so we'll say, so now, how do I reconcile those psukim? So the Gemara said, Mike, what are they arguing about? Mar Sarah Tchumin Daraisa or Mar Sarah Dirabana? So we'll say, so again, the Gemara understands over here, the nature of that machlokes in the Mishnah, Ayin Shan, you'll take a look at the Mishnah again, is how you understand Tchumin. We actually, if you remember again, this harkens back to both our Shabbos and Erevin days. The concept of Tchum Shabbos, having 2,000 amas from the edge of habitation, is that a D'oraisa or is that a D'rabanan? So I will say that is a fundamental Yisodistic machlokes, and the Gemara suggests that the way you interpret those psukim of 1,000 amas versus 2,000 amas, those who interpret the 2,000 amas as referring to the Tchum hold that Tchum is D'oraisa. Those who understand that those 2,000 amas are referring to something else, hold that Tchumin are D'rabanan. Beautiful. Both says beautiful, beautiful Gemara. Here we go. Turn Rabbanan. Boba Amdar Rabbi Akiva. Both say back to the Mishnah. Right, that day Rabbi Akiva darshan b'shashal Yisrael min hayam. When Klal Yisrael came out of Yam Suf, I will say Alu Yisrael min hayam. They came out of Yam Suf. Nasnu einehem lomar shira. Now I will say it's interesting. Nasnu eilehem lomar shira. Right? They literally. What's nasnu eilehem? They lifted their eyes, right? They gave their eyes. What I just want to point out last night, right, in our Chasidus Chabura, in the Piagetz, we were literally just talking about the power of Shira. The whole Shira was about the power of music. Just pointing out how incredible it is, or the power of song. When Klal Yisrael came out, Nasnu name Lomar Shira. They gave their eyes to say Shira. But say I saw brought down an incredible. What does it mean? Nasnu einehem lomar shira. Actually, let's first go a little bit weiter. So Ketzar, so we'll say, how did they say shira? So much good stuff. How much did they say shira? Kegadol hamakre halal. So we'll say, like someone, like an adult who is leading halal, vehein onin acharav rashi prakim, and they answer after him. We'll say rashi prakim. So we'll say, we're going to see now that there is a machlokes as to how Klal Yisrael said az yashir. How do they say az yashir? So the first opinion says almost like a response, like an adult reading Hallel, and they go, and Klal Yisrael offered up or responded with a refrain. For example, Moshe Amar Ashira LaHashem. Moshe Rabbeinu said, I will sing to Hashem. Vehem Omer Ashira LaHashem. They respond, Moshe Amar Ki Ga'o Ga'a, for Hashem is exalted. Vehem Omrim Ashira LaHashem. So I will say it's very interesting. So in this first model, so essentially Moshe Rabbeinu would say Shira, and Klal Yisrael would respond with the same refrain each time, right? Rabbi Eliezer Rosh Rabbi Yosef Lili Omer Kekantan Hamakri Esahalal. Like a child, ultimately again reads Halal or who leads Halal. Vehein onin acharav mashehu omer. And ultimately again they go at kol mashehu omer. They answer everything he said. For example, Moshe Omer Shir LaHashem. They Omer Shir LaHashem. Moshe Amar, right? So Moshe Amar ki ga'o ga'a. Vehein omrim ki ga'o ga'a. Let's say, what do you call that? Responsive, right? So first opinion, essentially again, they're answering the same refrain of Ashir LaHashem to every single thing that Moshe Rabbeinu says. Second opinion is responsive. Moshe Rabbeinu says, they repeat. Next, Rabbi Nechemia Omer, Kesofer HaPores Al Shema Bebeis HaKnesses. Like ultimately, I will say like a sofer. Rashi says over here, Melame Tinokos Vutar Bebeis HaKnesses Upores Al Shema L'Asar Adam. This means like a chazan in the shul. Meaning what? Shuposeach Tchila Vehein Onin Acharav. But Rabbi Nechemia says, no. All that happened is Moshe Rabbeinu started them, and then they recited the Shira together in unison. So I will say three machlokes about how Klal Yisrael said Shira. Either they responded the same refrain each and every time, or in other words, we'll still call it responsive, repetitive. In other words, Moshe Rabbeinu would say a line, they would respond, but it would be the same refrain response each time. Second opinion, Moshe Rabbeinu said a line, they repeated the same line. They repeated the same line after him. Third opinion, unison. They recited the Shira together in unison. So I'll say ultimately, what are they arguing about? So I'll say they're arguing on dashing al Rabbi Kiva Omer, Rabbi Kiva Sabar Lemar Amilsa Kamaisa. Rabbi Kiva said Lemar refers to the first refrain. They just keep saying the same refrain. Rabbi Elazar ben Rabbi Yosef Sabar Lemar Akol Milsa Milsa. Lemar means they repeated whatever Moshe Rabbeinu said. Rabbi Nechemia Savar Vayomru the Amru Kula Bahadi Adadi. Ultimately, again, they all said it together. Leimar the Pasach Moshe Bereisha. Moshe got them started, but they still went ahead and recited everything together. Shabbos say, Tanra Abanan, this is absolutely incredible. Sha'alu Yisrael min Hayam, when Klal Yisrael came out of the sea, Nasnu Einehem Lomar Shira. Now, again, we see this lashon of Nasnu Einehem. Nasnu Einehem. They gave their eyes. Now, it could just very well be Nasnu Einehem is a decision. And I will say it actually fits very beautifully into what we learned in Shara B'tachon. So I will say what Klal Yisrael were modeling for us in those first moments of complete nationhood was what? Then in life, you have to decide what you want to do and who you want to. You say, too often in life, we don't live life. We let life live us. In other words, I'm not making decisions about where I want to go and what I want to do. I'm just kind of letting the waves of life move me in any particular direction that they happen to flow. And the Gemara is telling us that's not the right way to live. That's not the right way to live. The right way to live is how? Nasnu einehem. Set your eyes on something. Make a decision. Right? It's not the pshat that Klal Yisrael just started singing. Now let's say, there's a moment, isn't this incredible? There's a moment before Shira. What's the moment before Shira? What do we call the moment before Shira? Nasnu einehem. Nasnu means you set your sights on something. You make a decision about something. I will say, how many times in life does it happen that I'm not really deciding where I'm going? I'm just going like wherever the next email pushes me. Or I'm just going wherever the next, WhatsApp pushes me. I'm leading a totally responsive, is that the right word? Reactive. A totally reactive life without making decisions about where and what I want to be and who and what I want and what I want to go. Let's say it's an incredible 2 words. Nasnu einehem means make decisions about your life. Don't just be reactive. Decide what you want to do and how you want to do it. That is the recipe for success. Only Nasnu einehem lo mashira ultimately results in Hashem. We'll have to stop over here. We're out of time. Say tremendous shkoyach and meretz Hashem. Let's wait till tomorrow. Let's say shkoyach and shkoyach on the sugis of Tum and Tara as well.